This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast presented by ClutchPoints, powered by DraftKings. Rate us, review us, like, follow, and subscribe. All that other fun stuff. Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Sheldon Alexander, and I'm joined by Matt Russell, sports betting professional and creator of The Window, available on Substack and wherever you get your podcasts. We are here. It is the playoffs. Matt Russell, how are you feeling ahead of what I will still always and forever call Super Wild Card Weekend?
I had to Google that this week. I was like, are we still calling it that? Like from a, branding perspective, I was like, I'm pretty sure we weren't supposed to be calling it that even last year. So listen, man, this season did not end the way that I would have liked for reasons that I explained on my podcast. That being said, it was a successful season from a profitability standpoint. And you're sad to see it go because, you lived with it for so long. But yeah, no, 18 weeks of the NFL season is certainly the grind that, of all grinds. But now we get into like the fun stuff in a weird way, or no, I guess it's not even really that weird, right? But like, this is supposed to be the best football. This is supposed to be the most interesting football. We got all kinds of legacies that are on the line here, right? Like, this is the type of deal as we're going to go through in these first rounds, right? It's like Justin Herbert's never won a playoff game. It's like Justin Herbert's played in 2 playoff games. It's like, and so that's the fun part, right? It's bigger than betting in a lot of ways. And while, of course, we have a ton of bets and, again, over at the window, we do all kinds of prop betting and stuff like that. And that's going to lead obviously to the Super Bowl and that's going to be a thrill. But, it's different. It's just different from the regular season. And so as much as, the regular season is this grind and you just kind of go like, man, when is this going to be over? The minute it's over, you're like, oh, kind of miss it. I mean, we're 3 days without football this week. I don't even know what I did over the course of those 3 days. Like I guess I hung out with my wife.
Well, I mean, I was watching a little bit of basketball as we waited for the playoffs to turn around here. And
naturally,
I didn't even mean to do that, but I guess maybe that's a segue into a promo that there might be some basketball stuff on the way, but story for another day. For the folks that might be new to what we do here on this pod, I'm going to give you a pick and then Matt comes in with the information and education on where the line was, where it is, where it could be heading into kickoff, which dare I say might be even so much more important heading into the playoffs. I come out the other side with a much more informed pick. I play the role of the viewer. Sometimes Matt convinces me to change my pick, and other times I foolishly don't listen. But that's a joke. That's a bit. That is the show. The goal, as I always say, is to win more than I lose. Last week, 7-9, which I will take.
Okay.
7-9 week. Finish the season at 139, 128, and 5. Hey, I call that a success. I'm okay with that. I'm going to take
showing
that.
off, not falling behind. Yeah, man. Listen,
I'm going to take that.
I'm always bummed. Not always bummed because I shouldn't be bummed, but like I always like low key under the radar. I'm hoping you just finish right at 500
just for
every year.
Because that's the
just
point.
For math. Yeah, just for math purposes, right? Because again, the longer you go with this. And so, I referenced earlier, like the season not finishing the way that I wanted to, because I finished 1 game out of the money in the Circa Million contest. Mm-hmm. And that's a smaller sample size, right? That's a 90 game sample size. Yeah. And so like, I also, over at the window, like we bet like, I think the number was like 170 something sides, then like 25 some odd totals, bunch of teasers, et cetera, right? But like you're making picks on 272 games. I'm giving out bets on like 170 of them, at least from an against the spread perspective, and then I'm picking of those the best 90 that I feel good on a 5 game per week type basis, right? So like the tighter it goes, the better it's supposed to get, and that's the way that it worked this season. And so while listen, I'm delighted that you were 11 games above 500. I 272 picks over the course of the season. That's really, really impressive. It is sort of funnier when you do kind of land around 500, where it's like, and if the season was 544 games instead of 272. You'd be right back to 500, right? Because that's just, that's just mathematics at this point. That's just the way that works. So, congratulations to you. That's super fun. That at least next year we can be like, we were 11 games over 500 on the podcast,
Let's
even if obviously not
go.
all those were ones that you bet.
Let's go. We start again on Super Wild Card Weekend. On Saturday's action, we got the LA Rams as 10.5-point favorites in Carolina taking on the Panthers. I know this is a lot of points, but over the years, what I have learned about Super Wild Card Weekend is I'm never going to be afraid of the big time spreads. The Panthers are not good. They cannot score points. Last time these two teams played, Bryce Young did put up some points though. I don't think that will happen again this time. Matthew Stafford, the last time these two teams played, he turned the ball over a bunch. I do not think that will happen again this time. But most importantly, I'm just not trusting Bryce Young in a playoff game. I'm not about that life, as the kids say. Rams roll here for me. Give me the Rams. I will lay the 10.5 points on the road.
Yeah, and tons obviously reason to like the Rams, right? And I'm not going to try to talk you out of that because you made the sort of very short version of the points that I'm going to make anyway, right? Which is not only where there are all kinds of turnovers and Bryce Young's throwing 3 different 20+ yard touchdown passes, which is not something that he really did. The rest of the season. I think he had 6 total in the other 18, or excuse me, the other 7. So there's 16 games over the course of the year. Not only that, right? 2 of those touchdowns came on 4th downs, where obviously, if you're willing to, when the defense is sort of amped up to try to stop the run game on a 4th and short, you can throw over the top. And if you're willing to do it, like a lot of teams aren't, you can get big plays out of that. And so the Panthers did that. And then you had the pick 6 on Matthew Stafford. And then, you and I have talked about this, ad nauseum over the course of the season, or the latter part of the season. But like these high leverage plays, right? If you win the high leverage plays, you're probably going to win the game. The Panthers won like all of the high leverage plays, right? So the 4th downs, the interceptions, we had the ball that went off the helmet up into the air when the Rams were driving for yet another touchdown. And so there was upwards of like a 35-point swing just on kind of turnovers and 4th downs in that game. And so, like, yeah, if the Rams just kind of show up and not have all of that stuff kind of happen to them. Now, listen, the Panthers earned, I suppose, those 4th down conversions and those touchdowns on those 4th down conversions. They did have the most 4th down conversions converted of any team this season. I would maybe make the case that like the Commanders last year, who led the way in that and had some like ridiculous like 80% conversion rate or whatever, whether it's this year or next, right? Regression tends to happen in that department, which again is helping the Rams' cause here. This is basically, or at least opened right around the same line as it did that first time around, right? So we have some of these rematches where you go like, what was the line the first time around? How is this different? There's literally one coming up that's like next on the docket that, is a rematch. And so when you look at it and you go, yeah, like for all of whatever the Panthers did in that game or this season being a quote unquote playoff team, which has its own asterisk, being in so much as they're an 8-9 team who had an opportunity to get in without sort of backdooring it, but just backdoored everything in sight last week, point spread and playoff spot. It's hard to make the case that like the line should be any sort of lower. And so when it opens at -10 and it goes to -10.5 and even briefly touched 11, you go like, yeah, man, like there's a lot of people interested in the Rams. Problem is, that's not really how we bet around here. And so while my opinion is that the Rams absolutely destroy the Panthers, I don't care where, I don't care when, that's my opinion. That doesn't really do us a whole, hell of a lot of good when it comes to valuations and stuff. So, Shell, I'm going to read you a list of teams, okay? Ready? Here we go. The New York Giants, the New Orleans Saints, the Kansas City Chiefs without Patrick Mahomes, with your boy Chris Oladukin at the helm, the Washington Commanders, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Indianapolis Colts with Phillip Rivers, the Atlanta Falcons, we'll throw them in there as well. What do you think all those teams have in common beyond the fact that none of them are involved in the playoffs this season?
I was just going to say they're all bad.
They are very much all bad. They're also very much, as of their week 18 point spread and their power rating in the betting market, rated better than the Panthers. relative to this point spread. So if you said, okay, well, the Rams are playing the Giants this weekend, Jackson Dart, et cetera, right? Somehow the Giants got into the playoffs. The Rams would be less than a 10.5-point favorite on the road. Same goes for the Saints, which obviously people were getting into towards the end of the season. The Falcons as well. We just saw that they were 2.5 to 3-point favorites at Tampa Bay. And I can promise you those 2.5 and 3 points weren't just for home field advantage. It's because everybody seems to think, and listen, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, that the Buccaneers are a better team than the Carolina Panthers. So this is a team that currently stated by this point spread. Again, whether this is true or not, this is not our opinion. This is the point spread. This is the betting market rating this team. They are the 4th best rated team in the NFC South alone. And yet they are here, right? And so if you say to yourself, well, listen, they're not the 4th worst team in the NFC South. They're not worse than the Giants, Commanders, Falcons, et cetera, all these other teams that you just mentioned. Then like you kind of have to bet on the Panthers this week, because that's how we define value. If you were quite literally undervalued, and in this case pushed below all of these other teams, that's what undervaluing looks like. And so you could say, well, like, listen, like the Rams, maybe they're like way overrated. That may be the case too, but again, that would be reason to bet against the Rams laying 10.5 points. And as we've seen this season, right, like they have reached, what was it? I think like week 10, week 11, maybe kind of right before this game. They were the number 1 power rated team, in the NFL, right? But like even still, they lost a couple of games down the stretch. They were in that game far too long with the Arizona Cardinals this past weekend. And so there's a certain degree of like, we all like the Rams because we can't point to a glaring hole. Because in this season where there are so many quarterbacks to start with in the playoffs, where you're like, don't like that guy, don't like that guy, don't like that guy, or teams ravaged with injuries like the team with the hat that you're currently wearing, right? Where it's like, ooh, like would like them, but. The fact of the matter is, like, there is no sort of obvious hole for the Rams, other than the fact that the results, losing to the Falcons, losing to the, blowing a lead to the Seahawks, and then again, like taking way too long to dispatch of the Cardinals, who like packed it in months ago. Like at a certain point, you're just like, the results aren't particularly great, going right back to that week 13 game against the Panthers. And so like we're gonna blame all of that stuff that we've talked about, 4th downs and turnovers, for that result. But it's like, like the Rams still ended up in the 5th slot. And again, the 5th slot's always a bit misleading, right? Because it's like, well, actually they're but like what, the 2nd best team in the NFC. So it's like, they ended up in that spot for a reason. They lost a bunch of games that they probably should have won. And so there weren't any real points this season where they were this big of a favorite on the road and covered. And when any team was this big of a favorite on the road, there was 7 such instances where a double-digit road favorite existed. There's not counting week 18, which obviously things get like super weird. And if you don't include the Jets, which is a category in and of themselves, and you don't include anything involving Jake Browning, the other 5 instances where there was a double-digit home favorite, all covered. Right. And so in every one of those instances, like it's all the same, right? You're a double-digit home favorite because nobody thinks you have a chance to compete. And so whether that's happening in week 4, week 12, or week 19, as the case may be, like these are all the same scenarios from a betting perspective. The only difference, and this is sort of swinging back to your case for like why it's fine to lay it with the Rams, in a bunch of those other instances, like say Denver at Kansas City on Christmas, we were making assumptions about how bad Kansas City was going to be. And so all they had to be was, remember, they were rated as a 9 in our rating scale out of 100. It's like, they're probably going to be better than a 9. And, they were a 25, a 30, right? Like they were still bad. They just weren't that bad. Right. Like all of those other games are like, we're making assumptions because this quarterback is out or this team is doing, got this to deal with, that to deal with. The Panthers come in full strength, like as good as they're going to be. And the betting market at -10 was still like, no, I don't want to do that. Right. And so like, that's why I'm like, I'm not going to like throw my body in front of it, but it's worth sort of understanding that like There were so few scenarios during the regular season. Again, 272 games, 7 of them in the first 17 weeks, where a team was a road favorite of this much, and they just didn't get it done, including in this very game. And so, yeah, man, it's like it's easy to explain away obviously that stuff with turnovers and fourth down stuff and whatnot. And again, like you add in the fact that like the Rams are only getting healthier. Devontae Adams, like no injury designation, pretty clear that they were just holstering him for the
Yeah.
playoffs, right? I don't know if you caught like Monday Night Football 2 weeks ago, or they showed him warming up, and it's just like, oh, that dude's ready. Like, there's no restrictor plate on that guy's hamstring at this point. Like, he's fine, and they're like, yeah, we think we can probably win these games without him, and they won one of the two, which is all they really needed to do. So they did do what they needed to get done after they lost that game to the Seahawks, and obviously even that, right, where you blow that 16-point lead in that game, and people coming out of that game still going like, I still like the Rams because I still don't see a glaring hole, even though the results haven't necessarily been what you would expect from a team that like allegedly doesn't have holes. And so, you put them at the top of the power ratings in the NFL, and then you put the Carolina Panthers, let's see, 7th worst in the league, right? You want another group of teams: Browns, Quinn Ewers led Dolphins, Cardinals, Titans, Raiders, and Jets are the only teams that were rated worse than the Panthers. So again, if you think they're better than that, you kind of have to bite the bullet here and back the Panthers. But if you just go, listen, it's one game, it's the playoffs. I don't see any holes with the Rams. I think they can move the ball up and down on the Panthers. I don't think the Panthers can do the same to the Rams. Man, it's hard for me to get in your way there because, again, we've seen what the Panthers are capable of doing. Yeah, they have the 2 wins against the Packers and the Rams. They also have 5 pretty convincing losses to other playoff teams. Bills, Patriots, your 49ers, Seahawks at home 2 weeks ago, right? Like, I think that game could look very similar to this one and vice versa, right? Where it's like, yeah, the Panthers tried their hardest, but they managed like 10 points. And the other team managed like 21 or 24, which maybe leads to a different bet altogether.
Yes. It will be another great way to kick off wildcard weekend for sure. The Panthers trying to do the thing as underdogs. We move on to our night game on Saturday, which is the Packers and this is a night game on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
Packers at the Bears. Packers are 1.5 slight favorites here. This is an interesting one. I know that the Bears have won the games already this season. Obviously, there were injuries that were involved, including, obviously the Packers played the last game with Malik, which,
second last game with Malik. We had a Clayton Tune last week.
Yes.
We had Toontown. We went to Toontown last week, Shell.
We did. This is an interesting one here. And it says I'm on the Bears here. I'm starting on the Bears. And this is tough because normally I'm not going to ride with the young quarterback who is making their first playoff appearance here. And I'm putting a lot into the stock of the head coach and how Ben has been able to work with Caleb this year. It's been very interesting. It's been very good. And also just the run game is really good. It's just a matter of, can they run a playoff game plan of just running the ball, controlling the clock, and winning it that way? The problem is their defense is not good. And that's what really worries me here. So I'm on the Bears.
Yeah.
But I can't say that I'm confident in the Bears here at all, which, it's the Bears. So here we are. Bears plus 1.5. That's where I'm rolling.
Yeah, I referenced obviously the being one game short in Circa Millions this year, which means, of course, you have to go back and go like, all right, where were the one game, that I could have made up? And obviously over the course of 90 games, like there's a bunch of them. And this year particularly, there's like I would need to add 2 to 3 metaphorical faces to a Mount Rushmore of brutal beats that I had within the contest. One of those, a Saturday night game between the Packers and the Bears.
Yes.
3 weeks ago, that was in fact a contest play that, again, would be nice to swing from a loss to a win. So yeah, this is a bit of a torture chamber game for me because of that. I was on, as you could probably figure out, I was on the Packers that night. And the reason for that was, again, from a fundamental valuation perspective, the Bears were a 1.5 point favorite.
Yeah.
And, the Packers had just lost Micah Parsons. And so the question mark was, all right, is Parsons' absence going to matter enough for the line to swing to the degree where the Bears should be 1.5 point favorites? And while that game plays out and they lose Jordan Love and they still have a 10-point lead, like you would make the case like, yeah, the Packers are the better team. Like they survived
Yeah.
not only not having Parsons, but also not having Love. Now we've got, 3 weeks later, we've got the Packers as the 1.5 point favorite. And so, again, similar in a way to the Carolina LA thing, it's like, okay, well, there's a rematch here. This one, a sort of whatever a rematch is to when you've already played twice, a tri match. I don't know, made that up. We're looking at this game going like, well, okay, so what is the interest in the Packers here?
Yeah.
And Shell, you and I can go back to mid-season when Micah Parsons was healthy. And we were sitting around going like, so like, what have the Packers done to deserve this credit that they're getting in the betting market? Like we did that on multiple weeks. And after, but essentially, as we all know, what happens with, when you trade for Micah Parsons before the season, you get bumped up in this division to the favorite before the season even starts. Then you handle the Lions comfortably in week 1. And then 4 days later, you handle the Commanders, which like back in week 2 felt really impressive because that was a team that was in the NFC Championship the week before or the season before. Now we look back and go like, oh, beating the Commanders at home, like, cool, but like it's not that, even with Jaden Daniels, it's like not that impressive. And so, but at the time, the rating for the Packers like went kind of through the roof. And so since then, I think they've covered 4 games against the spread in like commonly available lines. That doesn't count the peak line of 13.5 that they quote unquote covered with a field goal at the end of week 18. That doesn't count, folks. I'm sorry. Minnesota was a 7 to 8.5 point favorite all week. Just because it closed 13.5 doesn't mean anybody was betting it at 13.5. So the point is that like all season long, it's just being like, yeah, okay, but that, I see that result, but like I'm still going to give the Packers credit. And there was a 3-game win streak in there where it was what they beat the Vikings. They have a nice win on Thanksgiving. And, I think there was 3 straight covers in there. And so people are like, yeah, okay, cool. Well, now here we are with a team that from a betting perspective has been overrated since week 2. Who has lost the piece of the puzzle that got them sort of launched into the forefront of the power ratings in the first place, which is Parsons. And then who also, by the way, like hasn't done anything to deserve getting re-rated back into this. Because what happens after Love gets hurt and doesn't play the last 2 games is the rating gets all janky, right? Like it's, well, where do we put the Packers with Malik Willis? Like he looked pretty good in the second half of that game and they're playing at home against the Ravens. And meanwhile, like the Ravens don't have Lamar Jackson. And it was this total like chaotic thing where it was like, which way are we putting, each of these teams with their backup quarterback? Well, they come out at home and they get run over. And so we could point out like, oh, Micah Parsons wasn't there. Like Micah Parsons isn't there particularly to play run defense. Like he was a much better run defender this season than he had been really in any of his years in Dallas. But like you're supposed to still be able to defend the run without Micah Parsons. And they did not do that. And so because Jordan Love kind of went away, and honestly, the Packers kind of went away for week 18, when Love comes back, the betting market goes, all right, let's just reinstall them back to where we had them in the first place, which if you'll remember is 2.5 point favorite at Denver, 3.5 point favorite at Denver, I think it was. Didn't cover, didn't win that game. And so again, like it's just a laundry list of scenarios where the Packers have been overrated this season, again, with Parsons. And now they're without Parsons. And instead of being the favorite here, Chicago's an underdog. And so you can go, by the way, and look at Chicago's results. And as we've done all season, like we've looked at it and gone like, well, this team's not that great that they beat, and this team's not all that great that they beat. And they finally had a couple of nice wins towards the end of the season where people started to buy in. And they only played the Lions in that game last week. And you and I called it as my biggest bet of the weekend because I'm like, I think the Lions have the pride, no pun intended, let's be honest, to sort of step up here. And like the Lions might be a better team than the Bears. But that doesn't mean that like they're not better than the Packers because this Packers team hasn't shown us that they're really all that great. And that's why, by the way, that they're the 7 seed in the NFC, right? At a certain point, as Bill Parcells said, you are who your record it says you are. And so in this case, like, all right, so if you're going to tell me that last time the Packers were like 47% to win that game, I'd be like, well, that's a little bit low. But now you're telling me that they're like 54% to win the game. And after what I've seen over the last couple of weeks, and again, not including week 18, would be like, I think that's kind of high. And so again, as much as we talk about the Bears and people are going to reference metrics, again, how do we get to this line too, right? Because the numbers people are going to come in and be like, well, the Bears metrics aren't all that great. But you mentioned it with regards to Ben Johnson and Caleb. It's like, well, this combination is allowed to grow over the course of the season, right? Like, let's allow that for that to happen. And why, like, it didn't look great in the first 2 weeks. And it looks a little better. And it helped that they had sort of quote unquote easier competition. Now, if you had a 2-point conversion for your life, a 4th and 2 for your life, is there anybody that you would want other than Ben Johnson to be calling the play for that? Right? Regardless of, listen, Caleb Williams might not make the throw in the same way that he didn't make the throw on time the first time the Packers played, where Ben Johnson schemed up a wide open receiver. Yep. It just took Williams too long to throw the football. And so again, like whether it's a 2-point conversion or that type of play, like give me Ben Johnson and let's hope Caleb Williams doesn't screw it up. Meanwhile, there's also the element of like, for all of Caleb's kind of wildness and some, silliness or whatever, like doesn't turn the ball over that much and he extends plays. And again, sometimes this stuff is not quantifiable where you just go like, that team has it this season. Yeah. In the same way that there wasn't really any reason to like the Commanders last year. And then all of a sudden they go into Detroit and drill, the Lions. And so it's one of those deals where it's like, do I want to back the team with the head coach that I have confidence in to make the correct decision? Or do I want to back a team whose head coach is 3-5 in the playoffs? 2 of those 3 wins are when he was the favorite with Aaron Rodgers in his MVP prime, and then a blowout win against the Cowboys. And, I'm glad they beat the Cowboys handily, but like also it's the Cowboys in the playoffs. Like, there's 5 losses in there in like 2nd to 3rd round type games where you're like, you just didn't show up in a way that you needed to from like a head coaching standpoint. And so, yeah, Ben Johnson doesn't have the quote unquote experience that Matt LaFleur does. But like that might not be a bad thing because I don't know that LaFleur's experience is particularly great. You could see easily that if they lose this game, that LaFleur goes by the wayside with like some of these other coaches that have been quote unquote surprises that they've been fired. It's like, yeah, if you're just going to keep losing playoff games and underwhelming and being the 7 seed for what I think the 3rd straight season, I realize everybody likes the Packers because it's the Packers and it's always more fun when the Packers are involved. But like the rating here that makes them a 1.5-point favorite has just been, it's the same as it's been all season, Shell, and it's been way too high. Yeah. Meanwhile, like the Bears, again, home underdogs, like people aren't buying into the Bears in the same way that they maybe should, because I think this is probably the first year of a 3, 4, 5-year run for the Bears. Whereas like the Packers, like we tried to make that case for them in 2 years ago, right? When they had that close game with the 49ers in the playoffs. Yeah. It's like, it hasn't happened. It has not come about. And again, like not being healthy, particularly defensively, is going to help that. I don't see that. And so again, we're talking about, we're only talking about like 1.5 one way or another. I'm talking about the money line, right? Yeah. So if you're going to tell me, even if we said it's 50-50, that's why I was on the Packers when they were rated as sort of a team that was going to be less than 50% to win. Right now, the Bears are rated less than 50% to win. I think at the very least, they're 50-50 to win this game. And so I think you got to take the Bears.
Yeah, I like the Bears in this one for sure. I just think it's for me, the bigger thing too with the Packers is that in and out of the lineup for Jordan Love, he's had a banged up season. He's been in and out of the lineup. And now you're jumping back into a playoff game in Chicago, and we know that crowd is going to be on fuego in Chicago, as it's been a while. We'll say that. Keep it going, though, to Sunday's action. We got the Buffalo Bills, who are, as well, 1.5 favorites in Jacksonville taking on the Jags. This matchup is so interesting to me because, as detailed on this pod, I never really trusted Jags, right? Always waiting for them to fail, but maybe this season I've been converted. They're just good. And the Bills, meanwhile, we know Josh Allen has a cape, and I get it. But Buffalo versus a good defense is not good. You know what else is not good? Buffalo defense against a good running team. And I mean, if the Jags commit to running the ball, that's also not good for Buffalo. And guess what? I have to remind myself what wins in the playoffs: defense and a running game. That's why I love betting on the playoffs in the football. It's so much fun. Give me the Jags here. I'm on the Jags. The fact that this is a 1.5, I think this is the weird, almost what would happen with Mahomes back in the day.
Yeah.
And I say back in the day as if it was like that long ago.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? Where it's just like, wait, these two teams here, I don't know if this is a fair fight, but we're just buying into, oh, Josh Allen is just that good, which he is.
Yeah.
But this is an unfair fight. This is the classic knife to a gunfight here.
Yeah. So I woke up this morning, I got a text from my sister, and she says that my nephew said to her this morning or yesterday, like about the bus driver. He's like, yeah, it's the same one that we had back in the olden days. My nephew's 5 years old. My guy doesn't have any olden days.
Right. Correct.
Right. But like relative to him, he's got olden days.
Yeah.
Right. And so that applies for two reasons. One, the thing that you referenced, right? Like back in the day with Patrick Mahomes. Is this not the Super Bowl from last year?
Right. Correct.
Is this not the Super Bowl, right? Like, is this not the Josh Allen tax, where if the only case to be made for the Buffalo Bills in this game is two words, Josh Allen, in the same way that leading up to last year's Super Bowl, the only case to be made for the Chiefs was Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. Now, again, the greatness of both is a very sort of legitimate case. Like, it leaves both, the oppositions kind of going like, yeah, like, it's not the best, right? The other element to the olden days here is your man Liam Cohen. He didn't have any olden days, right?
Fair.
He's only got this season. And so, listen, there's a coaching carousel going around right now, Sheldon. I know you and I are standing by the phone hoping to get a call here, maybe become an NFL head coach. And if you get called to be, I don't know, the Cleveland Browns head coach, I go, Shell, we've been listening to the podcast. We love the takes. You went 11 over against the spread this year. Maybe you could be the head coach. And you go, yeah, if we're being honest, that seems like a bad decision, but I'm going to take the $10 million and I'm going to come down there. I'm going to coach the Cleveland Browns. And everybody said, well, listen, this is never going to work because the Cleveland Browns always screw this up. What would you say? You would say, yeah, but I wasn't there for any of this. That olden days wasn't when I was around. And so if you're Liam Cohen, you got to be sitting there going like, and I guess that's the sort of message to the Jaguars, right? And the organization and the team in and of itself is like, this is not the olden days for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And yeah, like it sucks if you're like dying to just sort of wipe half of the teams that are in the quote unquote small market, right? The not big brand teams in the NFL and just throw them under the rug and be like, these teams can never be good. But most of these teams are never good until they're good.
Yeah.
And so we've been sitting around going like, when is Trevor Lawrence going to show the promise that he had, and again, it's not hard to figure out that like Trevor Lawrence has all the skill set to be able to play NFL quarterback at a high level. It just was never really happening. And so at the start of the season, they lose a couple of games, and it was pretty obvious some of these games that they lost, like Brian Thomas is dropping passes against Cincinnati and some of these other things that were kind of happening to them. Well, once stuff stops happening to you and you get a flow, it's like the Bears thing, right? Like, let them get better.
Yeah.
And so the Jags got better. They have a team in their division that won like 8 games in a row and still didn't win the division because the Jaguars were in lockstep with them the entire way, right? Between them and the Texans. And so, like, yeah, not every one of those teams is like a particularly great team. And, they beat the Colts a couple of times. And I think there was like a quarter of Daniel Jones when in those 2 games that they played and, whatever. But like they have all of the pieces. And so the funny thing is as we talked about with the Rams, right? Everybody likes the Rams because there's no discernible hole. Well, what's the really discernible hole with the Jaguars other than the fact that they're the Jaguars?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, if that's the reason that you're not making a bet, like, what are we even really talking about here? Right. Like, you're in for a rude awakening on Sunday. And so, listen, nobody has more sort of positive things to say about Josh Allen and being the best sort of quarterback and the most valuable player in the league, even if he's not going to necessarily win MVP this year. Like, he's still quite literally the most valuable player to his team. Dude, I think the Bills get railed this week.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those deals where it's like running around, hawking it around. You know, we know the Jags can turn you over. I think there's probably some turnovers here that are coming. A very like old Josh Allen type of deal, which again is only going to be because he has to do everything. Jags are good on at run, run defense. They're fully aware of James Cook. I think this one could be sort of the ugly one. And it sucks because then at that point on Monday, everybody's going to be like, well, if Josh Allen can't do it when Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes aren't around, like when can he do it?
When they get Jim Harbaugh to be their coach.
John or
John
more available,
Harbaugh.
John
Wow.
Harbaugh.
My bad.
Listen, honestly,
I'm thinking of my guy, you know.
In coaching these days, like if you told me Jim Harbaugh was all of a sudden the coach of the Bills, I'd be like, man, something weird happened, but like
It's fair.
I could probably believe it. Yeah, like my answer to that would be, you know what? When can he do it? Next year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just because they're in this situation where they got to go on the road against a really good team that like the market hasn't caught up to, and people are willing to bet on Josh Allen because it's Josh Allen. And if they lose that game and it's like, oh, you lost to the Jags, like, ooh, gross. Like, this wasn't Blake Bortles Jags, right?
I mean,
this isn't.
Hey, Blake Bortles had a run with the Jags and they almost
know.
beat the Patriots in the
I know.
AFC Championship game. Like that happened.
And
we watched it.
And I bring it up because even in retrospect, it sounds insane that it ever happened. In this case, I don't think in retrospect it will sound insane, but it also doesn't mean that the Bills maybe get a new coach, maybe get a new GM, and maybe get a couple new players in here next season and are able to compete, win the division, and then be sort of back at it.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't just because they lose this season doesn't mean they can't. Doesn't mean it's never going to happen for Josh Allen. Well, no, like somebody has to be good. And it just so happened that some of these other teams that were a little surprising to us ended up being good, whereas the teams that have been kind of lingering around for the last few years, and as you know, some of that is just on attrition, right? Yeah. If you've been good for 3, 4, 5 years, it means you probably played a lot of football, a lot of high stakes football. And, you're going to get banged up. You're going to get hurt. Eventually, the Patrick Mahomes high ankle sprain is going to turn into a torn ACL. Mm-hmm. Eventually, half the 49ers are going to be out. Eventually, the Ravens are going to be banged up to the point where they have, virtually no defense and minimal offensive weapons outside of Henry and Jackson. Or Jackson is just hurt for, I don't know, the whole season. Is essentially what he was dealing with. And so it's like, yeah, some of that stuff happens. And it doesn't mean that the Bills have no chance going forward and it's over and this, that, or whatever. If anything, maybe it affects change. And again, maybe they just win because maybe Josh Allen is that dude. He is that good. But the way that the Jags are playing, where it's like guys are wide open on offense and they're making plays on defense, where you just go, that is going to be a tough team to beat. And we saw it when they went to Denver. I mean, look at even just, ahead on the potential schedule, right? The only two teams ahead of them, the only two places that they would have to go are New England. Maybe if they get past this week, we're talking about a 2 seed here that's a 3.5 point favorite, not to spoil it for everybody going forward. But they beat Denver on the road the first time pretty handily, right? Like this is not some fly-by-night outfit here. This is, speaking of starts of things, this is probably the start of something here. And so if you don't like the Jaguars because they're the Jaguars, you have to turn that opinion pretty quick here, I think. And I think this one could be sort of an alt spread type scenario here for the Jags.
Yeah, super interesting stuff. I'm on the Jags, and I just think, once we remove your viewpoint of Trevor Lawrence and, just what the historic nature of his era in Jacksonville, your views might change here, follow us.
Yeah, where's Doug Peterson? Where's Doug Peterson head coaching right now? Where's Urban Meyer head coaching right now?
I was going to say, good old Herb.
Yeah.
Our next game, San Francisco 49ers are in Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. Eagles laying 4.5 points. And I know if you're watching this video right now on YouTube, it says, Sheldon says, Philly minus 4.5. While Sheldon is sitting here wearing a San Francisco 49ers hat. Now, those people who are new to the pod, I will, the Niners have been good for the last however long, the Shanahan era.
Since we started doing this pod.
It's fair. Yeah.
6 years we've been doing this. Yeah.
Good call, actually. Yeah. And one of the things I always try to say on the pod is if I'm making a pick on San Francisco 49ers, I'll be very open about whether I'm betting on them with my heart
Yeah,
and
homer
I'm just
pick.
riding with them that way. Or if we're talking gambling, what should the pick be? Remove the heart out of it. And in this one, I'm removing the heart out of it. And the reason why it's easy for me to do that is obviously because of all the injuries this season. This is already a dub, right? The Niners, the fact that they got here and they had that opportunity to even be the number 1 seed if they won last week, this is already a dub. This is all just letting it ride in the hot hand in the dice game. With that said, this is the reason why this is going to be a tough matchup for them. You're going against an Eagles team, and I know the Eagles have not looked good for the majority of the season on offense, but they are strong in the trenches. The Niners, especially if Big Trent is out, which I'm pretty sure he is out, that's a huge blow for the San Francisco 49ers. And its injuries have finally caught up to them. As mentioned, this has been a great season. It's been a great run, but this catches up to you now in the playoffs where you need your playmakers to make plays. And if Warner and Bosa aren't there, and watching the Niners defense last week and the week, more importantly against the Bears, just get sliced and diced, like there's just nothing they can do. I mean, even against the very basic offense of the Philadelphia Eagles, this is just a tough one for the Niners. Did you see that stat that every single Niners linebacker that was listed on their roster to start the season is injured? Yeah. That's insane. You're on your like 7th string. You're picking up dudes off the street to play linebacker for you in the playoffs.
That's right.
I mean, come on. What are you supposed to do with that? And that guy's on an island trying to tackle Saquon in the playoffs in Philadelphia? What are we doing here, right? So listen, I'm going to be rooting for the Niners. I'm going to be yelling at the TV, cheering for them. Cool. Yeah. My guy Shanahan struggles against Fangio. I know all that, but this playoffs, one in the trenches. Trenches are just tough. It's tough. Philly -4.5.
Yeah. You know how like we talk about like Jameis Winston and we're like, it'd be nice if he just is like the quarterback for any team that needs a quarterback. Like he just kind of float around the league and just like swoop in for a game if anybody's sort of jammed up from a quarterback position. Unfortunately, the 49ers are at a point with Eric Kendricks as their middle linebacker, who's like basically doing that from like a middle linebacker standpoint. Like just kind of going around the last couple of years being like, hey, you guys need a linebacker? I'll swoop in for like a week. So if you have 3-4 injuries, like I've been working out. Like that's cool. You mentioned the game against the Bears, obviously giving up a ton of points to the Bears, but like I'll be honest with you, the Seahawks game was even more disheartening.
No tackles.
From a defensive standpoint, right?
The Seahawks game was disheartening because they could have won that game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's right there.
They got all the luck right up until the point where they didn't, right? Where it was like they got the breaks to keep them in the game right up until the point where it was like, if you just recover this fumble, or you just don't have the ball bounce into the defensive back's hands off of off of a tip pass to Christian McCaffrey into the defensive back's hands, like you could maybe sort of win this game. But if we're being honest about like watching that game, it's like, no, they're not the team that the Seahawks are. And we can do the thing where it's like Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, but like, yeah, those guys are helpful defensively and could help, particularly Bosa, obviously, like with the occasional sack and like forcing you into a different sort of down and distance. But like the run defense still can be goodish, without Fred Warner and without Nick Bosa. I mean, Nick Bosa would be like, yeah, I might tackle the running back on the way to the quarterback if I feel like it. So, it's easy to kind of go like, oh, the injuries. Yeah, on offense, sure, Trent Williams, but they moved the ball against the Bears when Williams went out in that game, right? And so the reality is that like, and we talked about it before the season started, even with the healthy version of the 49ers, like we will not know how good the 49ers are. They are going to be, they are lined at whatever it was, 10.5, 11 wins. They're going to make the playoffs and we still won't, there's a possibility we still won't know how good they are.
Yeah.
And that happened right up, not quite to the playoffs, right up until week 18, where it was like, okay, so we didn't really know that the Seahawks are going to be good, but now that we know that the Seahawks are good, this is the team that the 49ers have to measure themselves up against. And it did not go well. And the thing is, we talked about it. It was a playoff game. It was
Yeah.
you win this game, you go to the second round. And you know who knew that? Kyle Shanahan knew that. And he wanted to put everything into that game and kind of really going all in, going like, all right, we still have to see the river. We still have to see, the turn, cards and, maybe even the flop. But like, we're going to go all in with whatever cards that we're dealt with here. And it sucked for him that he was like, well, don't have Trent Williams. You don't have Ricky Pearsall, but, we can get by. And the reality is they couldn't get by. And so now we just went all in for this game. And we got to go across the country to face Philadelphia, who, for whatever reason or however you feel about the decision to sit everybody in sight for that game, that's the decision that they made. And maybe that burns them because they have to go to Chicago. Maybe it was a decision because they don't think Chicago's necessarily going to win this week. Maybe it's a decision that they made because they don't really think that the 49ers are a particularly difficult matchup in the first round, right? This is all these sort of things and conversations that might have gone in to be going like, let's just make it a bye week.
Yeah.
And so now you're coming to Philadelphia going against a team that just had a bye week when you pushed your chips all in and saw the river and the turn card and the river card go against you. And so when this line opened at -3, which is going back to our where did this line, start? Where is it going? Where is it going to finish? I did the George Costanza, like pushing over the children and the old ladies to get to Philadelphia -3 as fast as I possibly could. And so did the rest of the betting market. And that's why we're at -4.5. And so I think at this point, based on branding, you'll probably see some people making the case for the 49ers because, again, from a valuation standpoint, we're back to a pretty low valuation on the 49ers.
Yeah.
And, Williams is still questionable. We'll see whether he's able to go. And maybe it was just one bad game. But I think what went into that game is the thing that's really sort of disappointing. And so you look at it and you go, are the 49ers going to be able to stop the Eagles offensively if the Eagles get a healthy Lane Johnson back and decide to run the ball a ton on the 49ers in the same way that the Seahawks did? And it's like, I don't really think so. And then the other thing is like this 49ers offense that we felt really good about, right? They get the bye week in week 14 and they come out of that bye week and they're pretty healthy and they're just cooking a bunch of teams. That offense going to work against the Philadelphia Eagles defense, which again has gotten healthier. Jalen Carter back in that week 17 game that he came back in against the secondary of the Eagles. Again, getting push up the middle on Brock Purdy. So like even if Trent Williams comes back, when you've got those two guys in the middle coming at you, like Trent Williams can only block one guy at a time, and it's going to be an edge rusher, right? And so you're not really protecting Purdy against the things you need to protect him from. And then, by the way, like non sort of statistical metric power rating analysis, 49ers, like who else is going to get hurt, right? There's just sort of an element of like, whether it obviously is things that have happened in the past in Philadelphia, but just like vibes, like it's just going to, like there's just something bad that's probably going to happen to the 49ers. And there's probably something good that's going to happen to the Eagles because as frustrating as the Eagles can be on a week-to-week basis in the regular season, they also sort of manufacture something somehow, right? Like it's the opening kickoff fumble. Remember that one from the Packers last year where we're like, did anybody actually see who recovered that? And they just got the ball and nobody seemed to care like what happened in that. Like there's always some sort of deal that kind of happens. And so I think the way that this market move, is headed, like is the correct move. I think like as much as I could make the case, like, oh, the 49ers aren't this bad from like a rating perspective. Last week's effort probably took a lot out of them, and it wasn't particularly good against the top team in the league. And say what you want about Philadelphia, but from a two sides of the ball situation, they're still a pretty, really good team. And so, they can get a 7-point lead here and put the clamps on the 49ers. And again, that's getting only 3 points last week and really not threatening for much more than that, again, other than that late, McCaffrey off the hands interception type deal. It's not like they were running the Seahawks up and down the field, right? Like if we were worried about them from like a Bears 49ers standpoint, again, we can always say, well, at least the offense. Between the defense kind of falling apart on the run against the run last week and the offense not being able to beat a really good defense, like that's not a great recipe for a road game here. So, we gave it our shot here with the 49ers. being able to maybe get home field throughout the playoffs, and it didn't work out. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, you're probably going to have to kind of cash out your chips here with San Francisco and kind of hope for better, injury luck next year, I guess.
Just got to hope Brock Purdy plays the game of his life. Might be the Niners' only chance. I just think Eagles, too many playmakers to mess this up against the Niners defense that just has too many holes. We move on to Sunday night football, wild card weekend style. The Chargers taking on the Patriots. Patriots at home and laying 3.5 points. 3.5 points is a lot for a Pats team that there are questions about who have they played all season long. And it will be Drake May's first playoff game. And I understand that. There's a lot there. For me, though, I'm on the Pats. I'm laying the 3.5 points here. I hesitated because, of course, the extra half point is there to make you hesitate. But I'm laying 7 points. In Mike Vrabel, I trust. He put Drake May in a position to succeed all season long. And Drake May and that offense has succeeded all season long. And the Chargers team is still super banged up, and they will continue to be banged up. And I don't know if the offense has enough gas to keep up with the Patriots offense in this game, while Herbert, again, is banged up. And it takes literally one hit to, like, my guy's running around in a cast already. But the thing here with the Chargers, like, I get it. This will be a close matchup. And this is there's a world, obviously, where I'm on the Chargers, but no, I'm sticking to my guns. I'm sticking with the Patriots. And this is just in Mike Vrabel, I trust.
It's funny. You're sticking to your guns. I haven't even said a word yet. I don't even try. You got to stick to your guns after I try to make the case, because as much as these first 4 games we've been sort of in line. Again, we don't talk about this beforehand, so I kind of realized, in the middle of last game, I was like, wait a minute, we haven't sort of disagreed here. We've been having to bust out the potential buzzer here, or horn. I don't even know what it is, because anybody who listens to the season, I never hear the what is it? Is it a horn? Is it a buzzer? Is it a siren? I don't even know.
It's a gong.
It's a gong. Right. That's right. It's a gong. See, again, I don't know, because it doesn't, for some reason, control room hasn't routed it through to me. All right. Well, here we go. This is my chance to try to convince
I just played
you.
it on purpose.
Did you? Yeah, I didn't even hear. This is my chance to convince you the other way. So first and foremost, right, offensively, and we talked about this last week, where we're like, this Chargers team probably doesn't really want to win this Broncos game, because they don't really want to play the Broncos again. Now, they actually played a pretty good game against the Broncos. They didn't have a quarterback. Trey Lance is not a quarterback in the NFL, or really maybe anywhere. And so the fact that they did so well,
drafted Trey Lance, wow,
and traded up to do so. Yeah, I mean, listen, this isn't going to be a 49ers podcast, but good God. Still a terrible move.
What a time.
Yeah. So my point being, from like a defensive perspective, in a game where they didn't really have to do anything, or even really asked to do anything, Derwin James is on the sideline, a couple other guys are on the sideline watching, they held up really good against the Broncos. I don't think the Broncos had an offensive touchdown, right? Of course, Trey Lance, an obligatory pick 6 early on in that game to make everybody feel sort of comfortable about it. And so the sort of underlying deal with the Chargers defensively is that, like, they're actually really, really good, but because you only know a couple of names on them, like, you don't really think of it all that much. And then they finally get this Saturday night game against Houston in the first quarter. It's, like the 14 seed in the NCAA tournament coming out just bombing threes. They're just going over the top of the defense, going like, we're not even going to try to bother with kind of, moving our way down the field here, matriculating, as we like to say. We're just going to throw it over the top. And it works twice. And then the Chargers are like, yeah, like, we weren't really ready for that. But now that we are, you're just not going to score basically the rest of the game outside of like a couple of field goals. And that's just been the Chargers' defense the entire season, where it's like Eagles, Chiefs, like, they just kind of shut the other team down to the point where if they get anything from the offense, they're able to win. And if Cameron Dicker makes a couple of kicks in that game, they potentially, maybe, kind of, probably, almost, sort of, potentially beat the Texans in the same way that they pulled out victories against the Eagles and the Chiefs. All of those teams have a better defensive pass rush that was supposed to take advantage of this Chargers offensive line than the Patriots do. And that brings us back to why they didn't want to play the Broncos, because they would prefer to play the Patriots. Because when you look at the Patriots, who don't have anybody from a pass rushing perspective in the top 50 in PFF ranking, they are 19th in pass rush win rate, according to ESPN, right? This is a bottom half pass rush team. So as we've talked about all season long, X is bad at blank, right? Or X team has this hole, and then they play some team, and you go, can that team take advantage of that? And so my problem here with the Patriots is like, if we're being honest about it, the thing that the Chargers don't do well, the hole, right? The problem that we have with the Chargers from a macro perspective isn't something that the Patriots are definitively going to be able to take advantage of. And so when I look at that, I go, okay, well, now you're giving Justin Herbert a half second more, a second more to be able to throw the ball down the field, which is, of course, what the Chargers would love to do if they had their two star tackles available to them this time around. And so now you're all of a sudden like opening up the idea of Lad McConkey and Quinton Johnston and Omarion Hampton back now out of the backfield. And they're throwing to the running backs a little bit more. And they got a couple of them now who are pretty good in Kamani Vidal and Hampton. And, throwing the Amari Gadstons and, of course, the Keenan Allens of the world. And it's like those guys are actually going to get the ball with Herbert having a little bit more time to do so. And so on the other side, the Patriots are sitting there going like, we haven't faced a quarterback like this really all season long.
Yeah.
They faced three sort of quote unquote star quarterbacks. Two of them were the same human being in Josh Allen. And Josh Allen did what Josh Allen did in the second half of that game a few weeks ago. And the third was Lamar Jackson, who I believe dropped back like 12 times before getting hurt in that game. Otherwise, it's been a laundry list of teams that had either their backup quarterback or a quarterback that was like Baker Mayfield at the sort of whatever the opposite of peak is of his powers, right? When he was all kind of mangled and banged up and playing through something. I think it was the week after or the week before the Rams game where he literally couldn't continue. What was the other? There was like one more where it's just like, yeah, like that guy was not very good, even though we thought he kind of might have been at the time. And so, Drake May's had this great season and he's played some tough defenses, but he's played some of those tough defenses, like a Cleveland Browns team, for example, when he knew he didn't have to keep up with anybody on the other side. And so, yeah, like I'm the first one to say like the quarterbacks aren't facing each other. But when you're looking across the field and going like, I'm not really worried about that, what that quarterback is doing. It's a lot easier to play quarterback.
For sure.
And so it's also a lot easier to play quarterback when you actually have 2.5 to 3 seconds to throw the ball. And I think that's what you're going to get from Herbert here. I think the Chargers are going to be able to throw the ball. I think it's going to be this game where the Patriots are going to be like, hell, like we are in a real football game. Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, they got by against Buffalo the first time around. They definitely did not get by Buffalo the second time around. I've talked about this, right, with Justin Herbert. Like, I think he's just kind of like a diet version of Josh Allen at this point, where it's like you're watching this dude and you're like, God, that was an unreal play, like an unreal escape from the pocket, an unreal throw, right, because of what he has to deal with. And so if I just watched Josh Allen do unreal things in New England like 3 or 4 weeks ago, why can't the Chargers? Because of Mike Vrabel? Well, like I get that Mike Vrabel, favorite for coach of the year and like done a great job. The team was 4-13 last year and 13-4 this year and like all that sort of thing. You think Jim Harbaugh isn't every bit the NFL head coach? I think that he's every bit the NFL head coach of Mike Vrabel. You think Jesse Minter isn't every bit the defensive coordinator that Josh McDaniels is offensive coordinator? Like, I think the coaching matchup here for the Patriots, who get to go week in and week out against the Mike McDaniels of the world and the Aaron Glenn's of the world and even the Sean McDermott's of the world, I don't think is a very good coach. Or the John Harbaughs of the world who get a 10-point lead and sit their 260-pound running back. And so, you're going to win a lot of games when you have the better coach and the better quarterback. There's nothing quite to guarantee that this is the case this time around.
Yeah.
The Chargers might have the better quarterback. Not the better season from the quarterback for obvious reasons that we stated, right? With that sort of handicap that he's had, right? He's quite literally had to play with one hand tied behind his back.
Yeah.
And so, you're going to give me 3.5 points here against the team that sort of suits the Chargers the best. A Chargers team that's like gone on the road in really desperate situations for opposing teams like the Chiefs. You can say, oh, the Chiefs missed the playoffs, like they weren't a very good team. Like, disagree. Like with Patrick Mahomes, I don't care what's going on with the Chiefs. Like, going to Arrowhead is a tough place to go to win a
Totally.
football game, right? And so, like, yeah, if you can win an Arrowhead with these offensive tackles against Chris Jones, your man Spags, you can go to New England and win a game against the Patriots team, who've had a great season and are starting their own 4, 5, 6, 10 year run. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
No, for
like,
sure.
outside of the tackles, man, like the Chargers are this ready-made deal here. And you're getting 3.5 points with that ready-made deal.
Yeah, no, it's a tough one for sure. And the reality of the Chargers, and you mentioned Harbaugh, we already know what his model is going to be. He's going to try to run the ball, control the clock, and then you have Justin Herbert. You know what I mean? So we've seen him do it with less in the playoffs. So totally understand, totally get it.
No
I'll sit
switch,
back
no
and
gong.
enjoy. No gong,
Okay.
no gong. We move on to our last game. One last game here, and it just happens to be Monday night football game between the Texans and the Steelers. The Texans are favored by 3 points against a Steelers team. Like, the fact that the Texans got to go to Pittsburgh is just hilarious after watching the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens play a trash game until the very end, where they both made trash defensive plays to trick everyone else into being like, oh my God, this game is crazy. Zay Flowers is amazing. It's like, why is he that wide open? What type of defense are you playing right now? Anyways, story for another. I say all that to say the Steelers got their Super Bowl dub last week, right? And they barely got that. They got gifted that. Aaron Rodgers versus this Texans defense, not a good look. Their lame offense versus this Texans defense, also not a good look. In the past, I know it's Steelers, home dogs. You know, that's what we're looking at here. That's what I'd be rolling with in the past. Not here. Give me Houston. I will lay the 3 points on the road. I think their defense alone will cover that, and that's just what it's going to be.
Yeah, and it's funny that we are 5 of 6 as far as sort of agreeing. I sort of think about it, that game against the Ravens, because it was this important game for the Texans too, because the Texans tried to avoid this spot. When they sat CJ Stroud in the at halftime of a game, I believe they were trailing or sort of barely leading. It was basically a one-score game. Yeah, they were like, yo, we're pretty cool with just being the 6th seed and going to Jacksonville. Like, we're familiar with Jacksonville's work. Like, we've got that game plan. You and I talk about like dusting off the game plan. It's like anytime you got a division foe, it's like the game plan's on the ledge right over there.
Yeah.
And so they did that because they're like, we don't really want to go to Baltimore. Because as you know, anytime the Texans have played Baltimore, when Baltimore was, full strength, not this season when they were just absolutely destroyed from an injury perspective. The Ravens, whether it was like Christmas last year, the first week of, 2 seasons ago, the playoffs 2 seasons ago, basically just like destroy them every time. So even if you felt like, yeah, we're better this year, maybe the Ravens are worse this year, like we still don't really want to go to Baltimore. And so like that's how I felt about like them deciding to sit Stroud and a bunch of guys in the second half. And then they get lucky. And that game on Sunday night turns into, listen, we just had the holidays, and listen, at the best of time, this would probably be the case. But I got a buddy who he runs, right? He runs like half marathon, stuff like that, right? And so if he and I did like a relay race where it was just me and him, and like he's got to go and do like a couple of kilometers, and then I got to go do a couple of kilometers. My couple of kilometers, particularly after the holidays, or like I said, ever, would look like Aaron Rodgers in that offense, like just huffing down and like, are we timeout? You're in the middle of this. You can't call timeout. No, sorry, guys, timeout. And like just okay, and then eventually you score, right? Eventually I finish the 2 kilometers. And I hand it off to my buddy, and then he goes and he runs. And like before I've even caught my breath, he is back. That was the Ravens offense, right? Where it's just like, let me just quickly huck this ball over the defense, score a quick touchdown, and hand it back to Aaron Rodgers, or me trying to run a couple of kilometer sort of speed race here. And I'd just be like, what? And so kudos to Aaron Rodgers for running that race and finishing, right? But like the Ravens, really, again, this is not why John Harbaugh got fired, because he was going to get fired probably regardless of what sort of happened, barring like a Super Bowl, because it's been in the works for kind of multiple years here. Like The Ravens beat themselves in the end by like settling, as you like to say, for like the field goal, and you want kickers banned from the sport in general, like
Correct.
settling for the field goal where they settled for it. And it didn't start or didn't finish with them settling. It started with them settling.
You
Like
do
when they
know
were,
that it's deeper than just my disdain for kickers. Like I was sitting with my buddies and I looked at that dude. I'm like, this dude is not, this guy looks
oh
shook.
yeah, you love looking in
Oh,
dude's eyes
I
and
love
being like,
seeing this dude
this
is
guy
shook. And then he
does
missed. And I
not.
was like, I knew it. Get these
Yeah.
guys out of here.
That's right. And that's where the myth of field goal range comes in, right? Where it's
Correct.
like, well, yeah, just because you can make a field goal doesn't mean like you're going to make the field goal,
And
right?
he lined it up in the middle. What do you do?
And,
Oh, sorry.
and so, again, if there's a few more seconds or the Ravens are a little more aggressive and using timeouts and I don't know, maybe using Derrick Henry there because you have so many timeouts, they
Why would
probably
you do
get
that?
themselves, yeah, why would you use Derrick Henry ever? Again, still the funniest thing ever that they gave him the ball 35 times, like in the middle, in between, and pretended like that was some sort of moral victory when it was really just pointing out how dumb of a coaching staff they were for the week before. So, again, the point is like, yeah, like it took so much effort out of the Pittsburgh Steelers to score those. And again, it doesn't even have anything to do with them being kind of like exhausted for this coming week because they get, the nice sort of break here where they get the Monday Night Football game. So they get an extra day. It's more just watching the Steelers offense and being like, man, it's feeling like you got to convert a lot of third and longs or the occasional fourth down, or
Yep.
you got to bring out every Hayward you can find in order to get a 1 yard. And it's like it's only going to get more difficult against the Houston Texans, and it's only going to get and Raj is going to be even less interested in hanging around in the pocket. And so they have this moral victory. They beat the Ravens. If Tomlin and Harbaugh, if you felt like there was ever any animosity, it seems like they actually have a pretty strong mutual respect. But if there was ever sort of the idea of like, hey, we vanquished this version of the Ravens, and I thought like even if Loop had made that kick, I was like, if Raj at his last throw is a touchdown to take the lead, like that's kind of the only way we're getting rid of Raj.
He's good with
Like,
that.
right, yeah, like yeah, we didn't make the playoffs, but I scored. I threw the final touchdown. The final pass of my career was a game-leading touchdown. I didn't give up, right? And it's like now Raj has to go back out there and play another game. This has all the makings of like the game that we forget from the Steelers season, or the sort of last remembrance of Raj. We
Mhm.
go back and we remember Raj the way that we remember him. I would even make the case maybe Tomlin, who again rumored to sort of pack it in here, or at least step down from the Steelers and maybe go do TV for a little bit. People go, is it going to be Harbaugh or Tomlin who gets fired? Might be both, though in this case, Tomlin maybe doesn't get fired. He gets to step down. And that's kind of the difference between the two. That might be what they won by winning this game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, in a way, it kind of sucks that they have to play this game. And when you got this Texans team that is going to be in the backfield all night against Rodgers again, who against the Ravens team was like not particularly good at pass rush. And it was what, like 10 throws to running backs, and then like a bunch of other. It's like, yeah, they get DK Metcalf back yet? Oh, cool. To like go up against what, Derek Stingley? Like,
Good luck.
yeah, best of luck, right? And like, how far down the field? Like, how long is Raj, looking to wait in the pocket to get absolutely like crunched by Will Anderson or Daniel Hunter? So, yeah, man, like it's people are gonna say like, listen, it's the Steelers on Monday Night Football, like da 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 da. They haven't lost since 1991 or whatever. Like, fine. Like that's probably still going to get quoted next year because they're not going to include the playoff loss that the Steelers are about to take here from the Texans, who again had to have sort of been relieved that they're not going to Baltimore. Because by the way, Baltimore was going to be a 2.5 to 3 point favorite over the Texans.
Which is so interesting, right? Yeah.
Right. And so, like, even if that's the information you need to know, right? They went from being a 2.5 to 3 point underdog in a potential game to being the 3 point road favorite in this
Mhm.
game. Like, that's a pretty great break for the Texans.
For
And
sure.
so, yeah, man, like, and that sets up maybe an interesting game between the Broncos if it even kind of shakes out that way.
We
Why
shall
not?
see. We shall see. But that wraps up our wild card weekend discussion for sure as we head it to playoffs. We're just, trying to keep the good times going for sure. This is where, More chips will be laid, as the kids say. Or do the kids
Oh
say
boy.
that? Someone says that. I don't know. But
Not the kids.
not the
Definitely not the
kids. I
kids.
hope the kids aren't saying that, actually.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, never mind. I don't. Yeah. There's something. Never mind. I'm going to stop myself from saying something I shouldn't say on a microphone.
All right.
But I will let you continue to speak on said microphone and let the people know where they can find more of the information that you'll be putting out there between now and the start of Super Wildcard Weekend.
Yeah, and the thing, we talked about the sides, right? Like I think it pretty have a reasonable strong take on most of the sides, maybe not the first one necessarily, but listen, it's wildcard weekend. These are sort of 6 individual Super Bowls, if you will, from a betting perspective, right? Like it isn't just about the sides and totals. We didn't really even talk that much about like market ratings and stuff because like the lines are largely pretty tight. Like again, the irony being that first one isn't a particularly tight line. It's just daring you to take the underdog from like a valuation perspective, right? Because I can tell you all of these other things are like kind of exactly where you would think that they would be. So like, I don't know that there's necessarily a ton of value in betting the sides in some sort of aggressive way, but we do have 18 weeks and 17 games for each team worth of information about how they use their players. And so we get to do a lot of prop betting this week. And that's kind of the sort of other element where it's not just, hey, like, did my guy go over his yardage amidst a 1:00 game? It's the fun that we have over in the window on Mondays and Thursdays, where we have 3 player props in each game, then a bunch of anytime touchdowns. Combine that with an over the course of the weekend round robin touchdown scorer parlay and same game parlay plus, where we sort of grab a bunch of guys to sort of over exceed what the market thinks that they're going to do at like a super mega long shot. We hit one earlier this year for 250 to 1. So like there's a lot more going on than just sort of like what sides do you like? Because listen, like pools and stuff are largely over. So it's just kind of strictly about the betting, man. Like it's strictly about betting them here one at a time here with a bunch of games. And then of course, we still have a couple of games left in college football, big semifinals on Thursday and Friday night, and a national championship coming forth there as well. And then you know what happens, Shell? March Madness. That's up next. Hard to even imagine turning our attention to college basketball, but I know we will. Oh yes, I know we will.
This is true. This is true. So much time between now and said March. I can't jump to March yet. We just got to January, we got to slow down a little here. Got to slow down a little. But you can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Sheldon Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. That's Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. I always say I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast, as always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.